So before I get started, I just want to commend all of the students here. My name is Carter Abdallah. Many of you probably know me as Baxate. And I was a computer engineering graduate. I graduated in May of 2022, and you guys are leaps and bounds ahead of where I was during my Georgia Tech journey. So I just want to commend you on all of that. When I got asked to speaker tonight, I was trying to think of something that I'm uniquely positioned to talk on, because in reality, I joined Brev as a founding engineer, but I didn't found the company. And so I tried to think, where's the value I can provide here? People who watch me on social media know that I like to provide value, and I think that's all anyone can try and do. So what I came up with is a perspective change that I think a lot of people need to make right now as you're building a startup, which is I think that startups especially, and all technology brands, really need to focus on building a brand today. If you think about what a brand really is, it's a well-defined idea or a collection of ideas or an aesthetic that you can ascribe to something. People don't like to root for corporations. When you think of Nike or Apple or Coca-Cola, you're probably thinking about the swoosh. You're thinking about Just Do It, right? A well-defined brand. You're not thinking about Nike corporate. And it's not cool to root for a brand or a corporation. It is cool to root for a brand or set of ideas. Technology companies historically haven't really needed to do this. The landscape has changed, but if you think of something like a beverage, they are such a consumer product that they've been having to do this for a long time, and they've learned how to do it really well. Technology companies just haven't. But as we move more and more, and technology determines more and more of our life, when you choose a brand, that's part of your identity. And choosing technology products is no different, whether that's a software, a physical product. Somebody who uses an iPhone is a little bit different than somebody who picks an Android. If you're choosing Spotify versus Apple Music, these decisions matter. They're part of who you are, and it says something about you. And so you need to have that well-defined brand even as a startup. What does a brand actually do for you? Well, it does a lot of things, but more importantly, it builds familiarity, right? Something that you feel comfortable with using. It builds loyalty. People will pick your product over your competitors because they've used you before, they know what they stand for, what you stand for, and they like that. Additionally, and this is especially important for startups, is notoriety. When you're talking about distribution, acquiring customers, getting funding, people need to know who you are. And if you don't even know who you are, then you are going to find it incredibly difficult to break through the noise. So how do you actually build a brand? I'm not going to give you a blueprint here, because if everybody followed the same blueprint to build a brand, then all the brands would look kind of similar. And actually, I do think that that's what a lot of technology companies today do. Of all the people who are interested in building startups right now, how many of you guys are working on a software or technology startup? Raise your hand. That's the vast majority of the room, right? And a lot of you guys are probably in similar spaces, and you are going to be looking and acting like a lot of the companies that are doing something similar to you, unless you do something about that. I say go back to first principles. What do you stand for? I mentioned Nike earlier. Somebody who picks Nike, whether it's a clothing, they're basically, Nike likes to stand for fitness, living a healthy lifestyle. Apple's more minimalism and luxury and creativity. What is your aesthetic, right? What do you look and feel like? If I stripped if I just showed you the home screen of this right now, didn't tell you what it is, all of you guys would immediately recognize it as an iPhone. Right? Having that well-defined aesthetic is incredibly important so that people can recognize you again when they see you in the sea of all of your competitors. Now this one is a bit more specific to maybe the experience that I have, which is to be loud and be prolific. You need to be posting everywhere. Post blogs, post on social media. And technology companies have actually already started to realize this. For example, Mint Mobile. You guys have probably all seen the Mint Mobile ads by now. What the hell does Ryan Reynolds know about cellular technology? He doesn't know anything. But because they attached themselves to Ryan Reynolds, all of a sudden you now know about Mint Mobile, which sold for $1.5 billion to T-Mobile. Now, I'm not expecting all of you guys to go get endorsed by Ryan Reynolds. However, Brev hired a Baxate, right? And you can become the future spokesperson for your brand. We all have the tools in our hands to go talk about your company, talk about building it, talk about the struggles, talk about it, because what happens is all of a sudden you can break through the noise. I'm here at Georgia Tech this week with my CEO and co-founder Nader, and we're talking to research labs, we're talking to the AI institutes, and we're talking to the students. What happens when you're working on a class project for machine learning and your professor says, hey, have you heard about this thing called Brev? And then your classmate says, hey, have you heard about this thing called Brev? And then you go on TikTok or Instagram and you see Baxate talking about Brev. All of a sudden, you think it's way bigger than it actually is. When I joined, we were 3 people. We're now 8. And yet, when everybody leaves this room now, you all know what Brev is. And that's purely because of marketing for attention. We're no longer in an oil-based economy. We're in an attention-based economy. The biggest companies in the world are all technology companies, and they're all marketing for attention. Whoever captures the attention, that's where the money goes. Next thing is talking about your product. Does it feel like you? You should feel like part of you is in the product, and the product kind of feels like you. One of the best pieces of responses we got when talking to a user of Brev is he said, just using this kind of feels like I'm hanging out with you guys. When we were at NVIDIA GTC, we had a booth, and unlike all of the other SaaS companies there that have the black font, like super just typical, just imagine a SaaS logo, you can all picture it now. We're Brev, we have a Shaka logo. It was hated at first. Everyone was like, what are you doing? You're not taking yourself seriously. I'm wearing one of our shirts right now. We have San Francisco's Dead on the back. These were an absolute hit at GTC, and our booth looked like a surf shack. We put, instead of doing a billboard, we put all of the logos of our partners and everything on a surfboard. And so when everybody's walking around GTC, they're like, oh my God, this is the surf shack that I've been hearing about. And that just kind of feels like who we are. We're all young, we're fun, but we're also building an AI infrastructure company, right? And that doesn't mean we have to be boring. And that's part of feeling unique, right? If you're just going for the cold, soulless, corporate look, because that's what you think a big company is, right? So my company, even though it's small now, I have to look like the big guys. You will be lost in anonymity because, again, everybody looks and feels that way. And so even if they like your product, they won't know who built it, and that's a problem. As we look more towards the future and how I think technology is not getting any smaller, software is not getting any smaller, I think that you will have as many choices choosing what React framework you use, what browser you use, as you do when you go into the beverage aisle and you're choosing between Coca-Cola, Pepsi, or all the brands you've never heard of. And so we will have the same level of branding as we do. The Red Bull gives you wings of the future will be the software and technology companies that you choose every day as you live your life. And so you need to start building your brand now, otherwise the market will define it for you. And what's really dangerous about that is at that point it's out of your control, it's really hard to rein back. So having a clear vision is incredibly important, and don't get me wrong, it might not be the first try. Your look, feel, aesthetic, all of that can change. Stanley Cup has existed for about 180 years, and yet it was only recently that they kind of had a change in direction. And so brands can reinvent themselves, but they need to have a cohesive feel when they decide to reinvent themselves. So if you aren't already, I would encourage all of y'all to start thinking about what my brand is, what do I stand for, beyond just the product. The product might change, but who are you? What do you care about? Start thinking about the aesthetic. If you aren't already posting on social media, I encourage all of you to do that. And notice again that I didn't get specific here. Back to first principles. So many people forget nuance when it comes to these types of conversations. And if I were to give you a list of step-by-steps how to build a brand, then everyone leaving this room would leave with a brand kind of feeling similar. And that's not what we want. We want you to be unique, and we want it to be a reflection of you, not somebody else. I just want to say again how grateful I am to speak here. To short 2 years after I graduated, come back and be able to have an impact like this, it really does mean a lot. And I imagine many of you sitting here tonight will be back here less than 2 years from now doing the same. So I just want to thank you all again for coming here. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Nader and I will be hanging around somewhere if you want to come talk. And good luck to everybody who pitched tonight, who demoed. Keep working hard, all the things that Nader said. And thank you guys so much.